Sugandha, you can start.
Sugandha, please go ahead.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sugandha Tandon. I'm a research assistant at Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. On behalf of ICS, I welcome you all to the third day of 15th AICCS, All India Conference for China Studies, organized by Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi, and Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. We are also in partnership with the Guwahati University and Omiyo Kumar Das Institute of Social Change and Development, and in cooperation with the India office, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. The special theme of the conference this year is Connected Geographies and Cultural Interfaces. For the current thematic panel, the theme is China's External Relations, Trade and Foreign Aid. For chair, we have Professor Biswajit Dhar, who is a professor in Center for Economic Studies and Planning in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He was also the Director General for the Research and Information System for Developing Countries in New Delhi for 5 years. He has been involved in trade policy issues, particularly in the context of multilateral trading system, both as a researcher and a policy advisor to the Government of India. He authored and co-authored numerous texts on various related issues to trade and development. For speakers, we have 3 speakers today. The first speaker is Ms. Sharmistha Hazra, who is a doctoral candidate in School of Liberal Studies in Pandit Deendayal Energy University, Gandhinagar. She will be speaking on China's strategic presence in 3 East African ports, implications for Indo-Pacific security in Western Indian Ocean. The second speaker for today is Mr. Jasveer Singh, a doctoral candidate in Diplomacy and Disarmament Division of Center of International Politics in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Mr. Singh will be speaking on Decoding China's Foreign Aid Policy, a case of Pacific Island countries. Our third speaker is Dr. Khanindra Das, Assistant Professor of Economics in Birla Institute of Management Technology, Greater Noida. Mr. Das will be speaking on growth of cereal trade between India and China, what it means for food security. For the discussants, we have Dr. Panu Bazo, who is an assistant professor and head of the department in Department of Political Science at Sikkim Government College, Namchi. Our second discussant is Dr. Deepak Kumar Bhaskar, who is an assistant professor of political science and international relations in Department of Political Science at Nagaland University, Lumami. Before I invite the chair to begin the proceedings, let me please lay out the housekeeping rules. All the participants except the speakers are expected to be on mute option during the entire duration of the event. Participants are requested to send their queries or questions via the chat box or use the raise hand option. Please unmute yourself only when called upon by the chair to do so. I will now invite the chair to begin the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sugandha, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you here. We are discussing today an extremely important issue on China's trade and foreign aid. And this has attracted a lot of attention from during the past 2 decades, at least, when China has actually motored along and become the largest trading country in the world. China's foreign aid has been extremely controversial, and in fact, in the context of the problems that Sri Lanka has faced, China's foreign aid has come under, added scrutiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own observations at the end. I'll give this floor to the speakers to make their presentations and the discussants to discuss the papers first, and then I'll come back at the end. So let me call upon first speaker, Dr. Sharmistha Hazra, and You have 15 minutes to make your presentation, and I'll just indicate to you around 13 minutes that your time is coming to an end. So you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Dr. Dhar, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be a part of this great discussion, and I'm also thankful to IIT Guwahati, Institute of Chinese Studies, and other organizers. So with the permission from the panelists, I would like to start my presentation. I hope my PPT is visible.
Yes.
Thank you. So today I'm going to talk on the topic China's strategic presence in 3 East African ports, implications for Indo-Pacific security in the Western Indian Ocean. What is the present situation? Yeah.
Sharmistha, can you please make sure it's in a slideshow mode?
Okay, sorry. Is this fine now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what is the present situation in the Indian Ocean region? That we need to understand first. I'm sharing a picture of where China has invested in various ports around the world. We can see Seattle, Los Angeles, and there is Cristobal Port in Uruguay. Cristobal in Panama and Port of Montevideo in Uruguay, and then there is Nantes in France, Port of Pyros, ports of Haifa, Gwadar is there, Duqm Port in Oman, Hamadota, Darwin Port. So China is investing in all of these ports. Maybe in Seattle and Los Angeles they have some stake, but so we can say all over the world China is presented in most of these ports. So across continents, China's activities are increasing in several ports. Under the flagship program of 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, China is taking part in port construction. China's growth as a major power could be seen through its strategic presence as crucial geopolitical location. Great powers try to keep their foothold throughout the world to project their political, economic, and military power. After the launch of BRI in 2013, China has focused on land and maritime connectivity. Therefore, it has heavily participated in road and port construction activities throughout the world and wants to fulfill its Chinese dream. To be recognized as a great power, it is important to have physical presence in places which carries geopolitical and strategic significance. So it could easily say that Chinese presence in various seaports across the world is a part of its plan to be a great power. So moving forward, a port is an area where the ship can dock for transferring cargo and passengers out of the ships. Keeping bases or facilities is a very old phenomenon in the international politics. An external state can invest in a port outside of its territory just to secure the geopolitical interests. Ports are the gateway to international trade. The highest number of export and import of products are done through seaports. According to an estimate, around 90% of shipping is carrying through the port. In this study, I have taken 3 East African ports, Lamu in Kenya, Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and Tholera in Djibouti, which are very important in the region. Kenya is having a huge, and China has invested in several ports of Kenya. Moreover, India is sharing a strong relation with Kenya. Next is Tanzania, has a vast number of natural resources, and again, China has invested in several ports and infrastructure projects. Lastly, Djibouti is strategically located at the confluence of Red Sea, Gulf of Aden. Moreover, China is having a naval base there. So if this is the situation, we need to know if China is getting a strong presence in East Africa and how this will impact India and its allies, or how they are reacting and what implications it has on India. This is the present situation in Africa, where China is presented in almost all of the ports, be it in Western Africa, Northern Africa, Eastern Africa. China's interest in East African ports. China's presence in eastern coast of Africa is not new, and for a longer time it has participated in the development-related activities of various sub-Saharan African countries. Recently published Beijing Action Plan reflects its agreements on cooperation and exchange between seaports, and it would assist on the development of the seaports. It is a well-known fact that for the last couple of years, China has taken part in the seaport construction of various African countries. Through these activities, China's growing presence could be felt in the Western Indian Ocean region. China's relation with the East African state is not new, and it could be traced back to the expedition of Anauch Admiral Zheng He from the Second Ming Empire, who reached to Malindi, that means East Africa, and Mogadishu, Somalia, around 1405. The Chinese enterprises are active in most of these overseas ports. China's investment in the infrastructure development project of Africa started around 1970s as part of the anti-colonial solidarity it shared with the African state. At the same time, China has always kept African countries by its side to get support against Taiwan and accept the One China policy. Firstly, China is a development partner in Africa. Beijing is committed towards the prosperity of the region. At the same time, for its economic need, China has invested in Africa. The African countries get interested with the Chinese aid around 1990s. And there were less conditions in comparison to West. Moreover, China is more concerned about the development rather than West idea of human rights. They have been able to link business and aid in an innovative way. Forum on Africa China cooperation established in 2000 to promote diplomatic, trade, security, investment relation between China and the African countries. Energy is one of the major areas for which China wants a strong presence in the region. Africa is the second largest region after West Asia to supply energy to China. In East Africa, China is present in the natural gas sector of Tanzania. China's presence in the oil sector in South Sudan and Sudan is an interesting case of how China has been able to survive there despite the violent civil war. At the same time, there are criticism of promoting anti-democratic agenda in Africa against China. Most of the African countries has huge depth in China also. Growing significance of the Western Indian Ocean region. In the last decades, China's interest in the Indian Ocean region has expanded immensely. Almost 80% of oil being imported by China through the Indian Ocean and the Strait of Malacca. More than 90% of China's trade with West Asia, Africa, and Europe passes through the Indian Ocean. According to Beijing, the Indian Ocean region is being controlled by the United States and India. In such a scenario, to defend China's interest in the Indian Ocean region, China has increased its activities since 2000. The Chinese Navy has been modernized. It has visited various ports and later started to invest there. China wants to keep US and India out of this region and has expanded its military presence and the economic activities. The Western Indian Ocean region, it stretches from the west coast of India to the eastern coast of Africa. Western Indian Ocean region is the region that connects North America, Europe, and Asia. Major sea lines of communication are passing through the region. Gulf of Aden and Red Sea are important channels to move towards Europe. It is accompanying Persian Gulf from where energy is passing. It shares the history of the pre-colonial trade between Indian subcontinent and the East African coast, including the Arab world. As the British power declined in the region and the Cold War started, the center of geopolitical interest was moved to Persian Gulf. For a longer time, the Western Indian Ocean region got a little significance in international politics. The region was taken seriously with the growth of the maritime piracy around 2000. Eventually, anti-piracy operation was conducted by the foreign military to protect the major sea lines of communication from the Somali pirates. Now coming to the main thing, the China in the three ports of Eastern Africa. After the introduction of the Maritime Silk Road in 2017, under the this umbrella Belt and Road Initiative, China has usually invested in various ports of Africa, be it port reconstruction or building new port facilities. The Chinese firms has taken the lead. All over the sub-Saharan Africa, China is presented in 46 ports. Be it in Atlantic coast or in the Indian Ocean coast, Chinese activities have increased significantly. The African ports played an important role in Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, which will give access to the region for trade and economic development and will strengthen the PLA's foothold. Port reconstruction and building new ports are part of Africa's development initiative. 90% of African trade is dependent on ports. Within the 46 ports of sub-Saharan Africa, Chinese naval vessel has visited 6 according to CSI's report. In most of these ports, China directly owns the port or invests through funding and lastly take part in the construction. In West Africa, Tinkan Island port of Nigeria is being funded and operationalized by Chinese firm. China's investment in various seaports of Africa could be relate to the role of sea power in national security policy of famous geopolitical thinker Alfred Mahan. It is known fact that China wants to suppress the US naval power, thereby dominates the sea. At the same time, it has invested in various ports as part of its commercial activities. Through these activities, China has taken part in the global governance. Kenya, so coming to Lamu Port, Kenya is strategically located in the Indian Ocean region. It is bordering landlocked South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda. South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Somalia are going through political crisis. The Kenya's Lamu port is part of the ambitious transport corridor between Lamu, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. The 25.5 billion worth LAPSET project includes a new port with 32 berths. So this LAPSET project was aligned with the Belt and Road Initiative of China-Africa Cooperation. The $449 million contract for the first 3 berths was awarded to China Communication Construction Company, CCCC, back in 2015, and the construction began in October 2016. In May 2021, the port started its operation. Coming to Dar es Salaam port, the Dar es Salaam port is one of the important and oldest port of Eastern Africa. Situated in Tanzania, it is the 4th largest port of African continent's Indian Ocean coastline. The port provides facilities to landlocked countries Mali, Zambia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, bordering Tanzania. Strategic location of the port connects it with East and Central Africa, Europe, Australia, America, Middle East, and East Africa. It has 11 deepwater berths and it handles 95% of Tanzania's international trade. Under this Dar es Salaam port modernization project, it was given to China Harbour Engineering Company, subsidiary of CCCC. In 2017, the Tanzania government signed a $150 billion deal with CHEC to expand the port under the funding from World Bank. The port was scheduled to complete by 2020, and by 2022, 7 berths has been started. Apart from the Dar es Salaam port, China has taken part in the Matwara port and Bagmai port project. The Bagmai port project was cancelled by the former president John Magufuli under the accusation that Chinese promoters gave abusive and tricky conditions, as the promoters asked for 33 years guarantee and 99 years lease. But the new president Samia Suluhu Hassan has resumed the contract. Most of the time, the deals are being done secretly with the African corrupt leaders. Eventually, this will lead countries like Tanzania under the debt trap. So coming to the last one, Dhulero multipurpose port, which is in Djibouti, strategically located at the confluence of Red Sea and the Indian Ocean and is connected with the Addis Ababa Djibouti Railway. It is located on one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. The landlocked Ethiopia is dependent upon the ports of Djibouti. The construction of the port worth $590 million was jointly financed by Djibouti Port and the China Merchants Holding International. One of the 6 berths is being used by the PLA as its first overseas naval base, which was agreed in 2015. The project was completed by CMHI in 2017. From then on, Chinese Navy is active there and performed their first exercise back in 2017. In 2013, it started actually from 2013. So China wants to be a great power and so have participated in the port construction work. Lamu and Dar es Salaam are part of China's global strategy to project power. In case of Dholera naval base, other superpowers are having base. So China's base is also legitimate as great power behaves in such a way. China believes in the development rather than democracy. Through development, peace and prosperity is possible.
Mr. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you conclude in another 2 minutes, please? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. So coming to the last point, implications for the Indo-Pacific security. So Indo-Pacific has emerged as a new arena of geopolitics after the Chinese activities increased in the region. We know Indo-Pacific emerged as a new idea after the Shinzo Abe announced this, and this was announced from Kenya, which is located in the Western Indian Ocean region for an open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. China's aggressive role and its involvement in domestic politics of various countries in Sri Lanka and Pakistan, what Dr. Day has already mentioned, has also created instability across the Indian Ocean. So this is Indian Ocean region. So time and again, we know Chinese surveillance ships has entered the Indian Ocean region very close to India. So last time when it entered Sri Lanka, despite being Sri Lanka's opposition or India's opposition, it was there. AUKUS has been signed by Australia, United States and Kingdom, and China has actually accused it of bringing nuclear power in the region. India is expanding in relationship with the East African countries. So we know that recently in Gandhinagar only, the India-Africa Defense Dialogue and the Indian Ocean Region Plus Defense Minister Conclave was organized. What was formed in 2017 and Indo-Pacific emerged as a new arena of geopolitics to check China's rise, though China has accused it as an Asian NATO. Africa is a top priority for India. Well, I visited this India-Africa Defense Expo. So most of the startups, they are interested in connecting with Africa. India has signed the agreement on reciprocal provision of suppliers and services with Japan so that it can use a naval base of Japan in Djibouti. There is intent to reach a trade pact with Africa. And lastly, there is Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, is a competitive initiative by BRI of China, and Japan has taken the lead in this. So that's all from my side. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sharmistha. It was a very good presentation. The only thing that I was thinking that you could add was the implications for the Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation, which India is very active in. So how does China's presence in this region influence IOARC?
Okay.
Very good presentation. Let me now turn to the next speaker, who's Jasveer Singh. He's from JNU, and he'll be speaking on decoding China's foreign aid policy, the case of Pacific Island countries. Jasveer, you have the floor, and like Sharmistha, you'll have 15 minutes.
Jasveer, I think you're on mute.
We can't hear you, Jasveer.
Jasveer, we still can't hear you. If you're...
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Can you go to the presentation mode, please? Can you just full screen?
okay, sir.
It's on the right-hand side in the bottom, where you can see the zoom option.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, right. Next to this, the option next to this, yes. You have to click on that option. Can you unclick the option next to that? Because you can see all this.
It says slideshow. Go to the slideshow.
Okay, sir.
Next to where you are. Next to animations is slideshow on top. Yeah.
Just a minute, sir. Back to next one. First slide.
Jasveer, do you want us to play the PPT for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Jasveer, if in case you're not able to play the PPT, we can do it from our side.
Partha, please play the PPT.
Right.
Amit, I can see your screen. Thank you. I think you can start the slideshow. Jasveer, are we good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
A very good morning to Honorable Chair, co-presenters and audience. I am Jasveer Singh, PhD candidate at Jawaharlal University. And today I am going to present my paper on decoding Chinese foreign aid policy, the case of Pacific Island countries. Next slide. As the emergence of globalization has certainly accelerated the international connectedness and trade among the states, in this interconnected international system of states, foreign aid has been used by various states to exert their influence into the recipient countries. I have divided my presentation into 4 parts according to the paper. In first part, I am conceptualizing Chinese foreign aid. In the second part, I am decoding Chinese foreign aid to the Pacific Island countries. Or in the third part, I'm discussing about the nature of contest between traditional and modern donors. And the last part is conclude. About this paper mainly answers 3 questions. First, how and why and how China provides foreign aid to Pacific Island countries. Second, how much significance does Chinese foreign aid hold for Pacific Island countries compared with traditional donors? Third, by providing foreign aid to Pacific Island countries, how China maintain its influence and fulfill its strategic national interest. Next slide. As we see, China has emerged as a modern donor, but not in a strict sense. Not in a strict sense mean China's foreign aid largely conceptualized as part of its foreign policy. Or when we divide foreign aid into traditional and modern donors, basically traditional donor focus their aid delivery on the basis of software of economy. They provide foreign aid on the basis of conditionality, such as policy reforms or as for the social sector. But on other hand, China provides foreign aid for the hardware of the economy, which is for infrastructure development, or it includes in its foreign aid, military aid and private aid as well, which is not included in traditional donors aid delivery. China provides its foreign aid mainly on the principle of non-conditionality, which is based on the philosophy of mutual equality and mutual benefit, and by providing foreign aid on the principles of non-conditionality. Chinese foreign aid is largely criticized by the scholars as a debt trap diplomacy. Next slide. China provide its foreign aid mainly in 3 modalities: grants, interest-free loans, and concessional loans. After independence, most of its foreign aid goes to African and Asian countries, around 80%, which is largely dominated by the strategic motivations as China emerged as a new state into the international system. So China needs international recognition as an independent state. So therefore, China provides its foreign aid in mainly in the form of capacity building and on the basis of realist approach and keeping in mind the time and resources. Next slide. We can divide Chinese foreign aid delivery into 3 time phases. Chinese foreign aid 1949 to 1978 till economic reforms. Under this time period, China mainly focused on providing foreign aid in forms of small complete projects goods and materials and technical assistance to African countries. In second phase, 1978 to 2000s, China focused mainly on providing foreign aid in forms of technical assistance and infrastructure projects. And with the opening up of its economy, China started providing foreign aid with the help of its state-owned enterprises, and thus the foreign aid, the nature of foreign aid, which is previously in the form of grants, and now it combines with the trade as well. So in 1994, Chinese Foreign Trade Minister Wu Yi announced the grand plan of combining trade and aid, which is on the basis of Japan's Trinity Development Cooperation Model. Or according to this model, the combination of aid, investment, and aid is adopted by the Chinese style of aid delivery. And in the third phase, after 2000s, China is providing foreign aid largely in terms of concessional loans. And after 1995, China started providing foreign aid through its Export-Import Bank to the Pacific Island countries. And it became the part of Pacific Island Forum in 1989 as a dialogue partner. And in the third time period, what China is doing, China is focusing mainly on strategic partnerships with its recipient in nature of military and economic cooperation. China established agency called China International Developmental Cooperation Agency, which is a main agency for foreign aid delivery, and working on the better combination in the various agencies which are working for foreign aid delivery. Next slide. China launched 3 white papers, which is the main source of the Chinese foreign aid delivery. We need to study it. So basically, China provided foreign aid in 8 forms: complete projects, goods and materials, technical cooperation, human resource development, medical assistance, emergency humanitarian aid, volunteer programs, and debt relief. Next slide. So this is the map of Pacific Island countries, which shows the close proximity of Australia to the Pacific Island countries. And sorry, this region is largely huge, resource-rich region, and on other hand, and volatile to the climatic disruptions. Or next slide. China provide foreign aid to Pacific Island countries, and it is the second largest foreign aid donor to the Pacific Island countries. And these Pacific Island countries are hugely aid dependent countries, and their trade relationship with China are growing in a very faster pace. And from 1992 to 2021, their trade increased 153 million to 5.3 billion US dollars, which is 13% in annual increase in trade relation. On the other hand, China's foreign direct investments, which is the main part of its foreign aid delivery in the third phase, has also increased and reached 2.72 billion US dollars in 2021, and mainly focus on procurement of projects, local industries, etc. Next slide. China alleges that it provides foreign aid mainly for the humanitarian purpose, human capacity building through its capacity building programs. And the main project of Chinese foreign aid delivery is its BRI projects that is working on various Pacific Island countries. 10 of the Pacific Island countries have signed MOU with China on BRI. And this is a picture of Independence Boulevard in PNG, which is a Chinese project, and which depicts the working of Chinese laborers and project going on there. And the rest of the projects are on your screen. Next slide. Now, by providing China foreign aid to Pacific Island countries, what China is trying to do, as the power politics has shifted to the Indo-Pacific, and the Pacific Island countries are the major part of the Indo-Pacific. So China provides its foreign aid mainly for economic and strategic reasons. It started providing foreign aid to the Pacific Island countries on the basis of, firstly, it needs to secure natural resources or key resources for its growing economic needs. And as Pacific Island countries are hugely resource-rich countries in forms of marine resources or forestry sectors. And on the other hand, China's provide foreign aid to Pacific Island countries due to their importance, as they are all an independent countries and the part of UN. And China needs their support into the UN system. So China provide them a foreign aid. And the main issue that is the main big reason to provide foreign aid to the Pacific Islands is the contest between the Taiwan and China. The contest, next slide. The contest that is going on between China and Taiwan is largely dominated through their aid delivery to the Pacific Island countries for the purpose of gaining recognition into the international system. Taiwan provide foreign aid majorly in forms of constituent development funds to Solomon Islands, which is around 19 million in 2011 to 2018. And thus, in return, Solomon Islands provide China with international recognition. And what China is doing in Solomon Island, China is providing foreign aid in the same way with the strategy of lead capturing in the Solomon Islands. Chinese foreign aid mainly focus on infrastructure projects, capacity building over there. And Solomon Islands, China is doing a smart view, a smart strategy, and trying to capture the subnational governments over there. And the example of its smart strategy we see as the province of Central Solomon Islands signed a memorandum of understanding and signed a pact with the China SAM Enterprises in 2018, which provides China the island of Tulagi, which is largely critiqued by the opposition in the Solomon Islands. And
please, sorry to interrupt you. Please sum up in 2 minutes.
Okay.
And the other thing is, whoever is moving the slides on behalf of Jasveer, the slides are actually not moving. They've just got stuck.
So basically, there is two types of contestation. First is contestation between China and Taiwan through economic means, or the use of economy as a weapon, as the realist argues that the foreign aid is a major component of state power through which donors exert their influence by persuasion or by sanctions into the over the recipient. So China is adapting that strategy, providing foreign aid with its big pockets to these countries. And on the other hand, there is another contest, that is the major contest between Australia and China, as Australia consider Pacific Island countries as its sphere of influence. So growing Chinese intrusion into Australian sphere of influence makes Australia Australian security vulnerable. So Australia come up with the strategy of strap up in 2018 to counter Chinese foreign aid delivery. And by providing foreign aid to Pacific Island countries, China is striving for more strategic partnerships, and China is trying to establish a security pact with the Pacific Island countries, which is not done yet. And on the other hand, Australia with this step-up strategy is doing the same. And as I mentioned in my first notes, military aid is not the part of traditional donor, but in the current scenario, we see Australia as well as other donors. They are also started providing aid in military assistance to the Pacific Island countries. So, in the conclusion, I would say that the growing Chinese influence through its foreign aid in Pacific Island countries resulted a more proactive Australian engagement with Pacific Island countries, and the Chinese foreign aid is a part of its grand strategy to the Pacific Island countries, which is not for countering Australia, nor it is only for altruistic reasons, but it is a part of Chinese grand strategy to govern, regulate, or to dominate the world system. So, and which is done through the use of economy as a weapon to exert their influence in Pacific Island countries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jasveer. It was very interesting. I was wondering that if you could dwell a little more, of course, not in this presentation, but later. The strategic implications. You have mentions about the strategic implications of China's involvement with the Pacific Island states. But if you could dwell on it a little more, and then sort of also compare with the American strategy in the 70s. It's always been there. Like, for instance, in the 70s, the Americans came and established bases in the Indian Ocean, trying to control the Indian Ocean. I think the Chinese are doing pretty much the same thing. They're trying to control the Pacific Ocean by investing in these countries and trying to develop these countries as bases for them. So I think it'll be very interesting to see the comparison between what the Americans did earlier in the earlier decades and what China is doing now, because China is almost following their footsteps, the big power footsteps in the current century. Thank you very much. Now, the last speaker in this session is Khanindra Das. He's going to speak on growth of cereals trade between India and China, and what it means for food security. You have the floor, Khanindra, and you have 15 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I am having slow connectivity. So before I miss anything, I would initially take 1 or 2 minutes to give a summary of the paper. And if my internet allows, I'll detail it. So firstly, the paper is discussing about...
Sorry to interrupt, but if you are facing a lag with bandwidth, then I would suggest to continue with without video. And if you suggest, we can do the PPT from our side.
Yeah. So before you start any PPT, let me give the summary. After that, I'll take your help in sharing the PPT. Right. So
Sir, I think we have lost
I
him.
think he's left.
Yeah.
No, he's here. He's here.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
yeah,
here.
yeah. So sorry about that. So I'll give you the summary in 5 points. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. So point number one is that the cereals trade. That means you have rice, wheat, and other cereals. Mostly, it was not going to Chinese market prior to 2020, and in the paper I have documented that in 2020 and later it has grown many-fold, and India is ninth largest source of cereals imports for China. So this is point number one. So is the case. India is ninth, largest exporter of its exports of cereals. That means in terms of trade of cereals, it has grown, exponentially from 2019 to 21. This is the first point. Now, why it might have happened? I have given the analysis. It is apparent that global export of food grains, particularly rice, fell by 40 odd percentage, and that way China was also not getting many sources to import from, so global export of food grains was also falling, and as a result China was a pragmatic actor here, so they immediately resorted to Indian products of cereals, and they started importing from India since 2020. So this is second point. And um, third is that they are kind of in a conflict with India in 2020, Galwan incident and so on. Even then this happened that trade flourished in cereals also, and I would argue that this is very much pragmatic approach of theirs, and also a balancing act, because India resorted to many restrictions on their economic activities, be it in terms of FDI regulations, or in terms of banning a lot of apps, and restricting imports from India through some protectionist measures. So this is also can be viewed as a their strategic response, that they are open to Indian products kind of, and also a balancing act to avoid further backlash. So this is the argument I am making, but before that I provided the analysis whereby I have shown that from negligible player as a serious exporter to China, India emerged as the ninth largest source of imports of cereals for China. So this is the basic summary of the paper. Now I would like to take your help in showing the few slides. So if you can please help me, anybody from the organizers, right? Okay, please come from slide number 1, previous slide. Okay, so this basically I have already talked about. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so India was not a significant player. The main reason for this was that they were having what is called non-tariff barrier, because any Indian exporter who wants to export to China, they have to take permission from one of their authorities prior to certain number of months, and so this process was a non-tariff barrier, and so that way that was not happening. But it is when required, China probably relaxed that requirement, and they started sourcing more imports. Please move ahead to subsequent slides. In this slide, it is the production and yield. One point is that they are producing more food grains, sure, but they also exports. There are certain reasons for importing food grains because they don't have all the varieties and and things like that, and they also export a lot of food grains to some of the other developing countries. So this is why you might see a contradiction that even though they are producing 600 probably million tons, why they are still importing. But they are not only importing, they are also exporting some of the food grains. Okay, please move ahead. Next slide, please. Yeah, so when the kickstart happened, right? So you can see, in this slide, you can see, if you see the year 2020-21, there was no, export of food grains from India, kind of. It started in November 2020. Then onward, the, export of food grain from India started picking up. And this bar suggests that suppose India is exporting 100 kilograms of food grains, about 4, 5, or 6 kilograms are now going to China since November 2020. This is the summary of this graph, and therefore the dynamic started since post Galwan. You can see post Galwan, and in the light of reduction in the global export of cereals. So please move ahead. Next. So in the next slide, you can see this is India's export market. Here you can see that in 2021, right? So you can see clearly China appearing in the picture. If you move to the next slide, please. If you move to the next slide, you can see India in 2001. And if you go to the next slide, right, this is in 2019. India is not here. That means India was not there as per the international data also as a exporter of food grains to China. So please move ahead. I'd like to be shorter. And now coming to cereals, there are many varieties, and most of the cereal export was driven by export of broken rice. Okay, so India is the largest exporter of broken rice to China. This graph is the evidence of that, and followed by other countries. This is the major driver of cereals trade, and we are not exporting each and every varieties. This is the broken rice variety, AICCS code 100,640. Right. So move ahead, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I'll skip this since cereals was mostly composed of rice. I'll explain this. Right. Yeah. So here you may have a look at these numbers. Global export fell by 2.36% during 2019 to 2021 in the COVID period. Now, if you look at the export of rice, world export fell by 43%, and world export of rice to China also fell by 42%. So that means other sources were drying out. Then India came into the picture, so China sourced a lot of quantity from India. You can see because base was very low, you can see 80,000% growth, and you can see that rice export in 2001 amounted to $369 million. Okay, and in the previous year 2019 before COVID, this was only $455,000. So this is why you can see a huge jump in the percentage increase. And this is the story of this paper. Now you can go ahead with the remaining 2 slides. So I'll conclude then. So therefore, what is the story? I would argue that China was very pragmatic. They would see that global export is not serving their purpose. So even though we had a border conflict, they imported huge amount of rice from India. And this is therefore, we all know about Galwan incident and what happened, how much restriction India has imposed. Even then, this was happening, and I have not covered in my paper about the entire trade story, because that is also a growing story. Even though we had Galwan, we have all-time high imports, and total trade also for the first time has surpassed $100 billion after Galwan. In annual trade with China has crossed $100 billion for the first time in the history of modern trade, right? So move ahead. So this is the last slide of mine. The next slide is the last slide. So what is going on here? Probably, is it good or bad, right? So probably India export only $23 billion and we import close to $80 billion of imports. Probably this product is a good thing we can export. Maybe we exported about, right, only $500 million of rice to China. Probably this can still go on, but we don't see this happening regularly. Even Indian government recently imposed a ban on export of some cereals like wheat or rice post Ukraine war. So the argument here is that if we have to keep exporting reliably to some other countries, be it China or be it Bangladesh, we need to avoid taking drastic measures like sudden bans and so on. So of course this is easier said than done, but to continue the trade in a sustainable manner, maybe that is one area where we have to be more reliable, or we have to have the supply going, right? And there are various other things that can be improved. And in one of the graphs I have shown you that China is appearing for the first time. We can also see that most of India's exports are going to less developed countries, not more to developed countries in terms of purchasing power, like in Europe or to America. So probably we need to focus on those markets as well. And non-tariff barrier is an issue, which some of the non-tariff barriers are imposed by China, other importers also. So India may have to not only improve the smoothness of the production and supply chain, but also address non-tariff barrier at both ends as an exporter also, and also have to take up some of the non-tariff barrier issues with the importing country, so that this product can be traded more smoothly than imposing periodic bans from either side. So I'll stop here because I would like to hear from the discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khanindra. It's an interesting paper. Two questions I have. One is that your title said implications for food security or something of that kind. Huh? Now, whose food security are you talking about? Huh? What it means for food security? So, whose food security are you talking about? Now, that was not clear from your presentation. I think it will also help the discussons if you just clarify that. And the second is, have you looked at the data for 22-23 this financial year, and what is happening there? Because India government hasn't banned exports of rice. It has only banned exports of wheat, but not of rice. Yeah, and rice exports are actually increasing quite a lot. So what is happening to our exports to China this financial year or this calendar year? Have you seen those numbers?
Okay, so I'll have to check that the latest number, right? I haven't yet compared the 20 to 23.
So it'll tell a story. It'll tell a story as to what is going on. Because there were reports that Chinese agriculture had had suffered because of drought and other climatic factors. So China needed to import from somewhere, and they imported from India. So that was a kind of a one-off event. And regarding,
thank you very much for this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and food security. Whose food security are you referring to in the paper?
Yeah, that's right. So of course, here both countries' food security is being talked about. So of course, India, is a country with a huge amount of food requirement, and population is high. So therefore, any export is always happening after considering the domestic requirements. So therefore, how to strengthen the internal production and supply and etc. These are some of the implications of this discussion, that food security, we have to first of course look at our own food security, but when we export, it helps meeting the food security of other nations also. So in that way, we can take out implication for both. Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, now move on to the discussants, and you have 5 to 7 minutes to make your sort of discuss the papers. I'll first invite Dr. Pazzo. Dr. Pazzo, you have the floor, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Good afternoon to the chair, the presenters, and the audience. I want to thank the Institute of Chinese Studies for giving me this opportunity to be a discussant for these two papers, which have been written very excellently. So the first paper that I will discuss is on the foreign aid, China's foreign aid in the Pacific Island countries. Now, as the author of the paper has mentioned, that the aid is it is based on the principle of non-conditionality. So that is what the Chinese side has has put forward. But then we see aid is mainly a tool, and their national interest is the main goal. So there is some intent behind what the Chinese are doing in the Pacific Island countries. Now, the first point that I want to go into after this is that the model that the author has taken is you've taken neorealism, and you've looked at it from Walz's level of analysis. Now, it's a very well-established theory that you have taken, but I would have really appreciated, or the paper would have looked much better if you had taken this model and related it and compared it with the other models also. So if I can help you in this, now I will just suggest you a few of the other models which are which can be taken, and then it can be debated, and why you have taken again, and then you can justify your reasons for taking Walz's level of analysis. The first one is you could take Graham Allison's analytical perspective. Over here, you also mentioned that how there are a lot of bureaucratic tussles between the inside the government. So over there, Graham Allison's model also talks about bureaucratic negotiations. So I would suggest this model to be debated on. You could take also Robert Putnam's two levels game theory. This is also a very pertinent foreign policy theory, and you could juxtapose it with Walz's level of analysis. And the third one, which I think is very relevant, especially when we look at Chinese foreign policy behavior, is Alistair Ian Johnson's strategic culture from his book Cultural Realism. If you could look into this book and debate China's strategic culture in its broader foreign policy objectives, then you get a very good understanding of why China is behaving as it is behaving in the Pacific Island countries. Now, this is the first point that I want to talk about, the theory. So the second one is just want to posit a few questions, on all the points that I am making is, it goes around your paper. It doesn't, I will not touch on the topics that you have talked about, but just on the things that you have not mentioned. So this could probably add more meat and more substance to what you have written. The second point is that does China follow a uniform policy to different countries within the Pacific Island countries, or does it view its relationship on the basis of a regional approach? Now, when I was doing my study, when I was comparing between Central Asian countries and China's relation with the Central Asian states and the African countries, I could see that there is a multilateral forum. They had FOCAC in Africa, and they had the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Central Asia. So they were operating from a multilateral level also. So my question that I want to posit is, do they have a multilateral organization, or do they intend to have a multilateral organization in the coming years? And with the already existing multilateral organization, which is dominated by the traditional donors, traditional actors, that is, you have your Pacific Countries Forum. So how is China negotiating with the already existing multilateral forum, and are they coming up with their own multilateral forum with themselves in the center? So you could look at that also. Extending from this, are they dealing with countries at a regional level, or are they dealing within the region? Are they dealing with certain countries in a very different manner in comparison to the others? So just say like the relations that it will have with Fiji or with Papua New Guinea. There are certain specific. When I was doing my study, specifically with Sudan, I could see Chinese behavior was a little bit different. Although they took it at a regional level, with countries they dealt in a specific manner to that country itself. The very fact that China says that it doesn't interfere into the internal domestic politics of internal domestic politics, we have to take that with a pinch of salt. China supports whichever regime comes to power. It provides arms. It provides ammunition. So that itself is, some kind of interfering into the domestic politics. So that point can be taken. Then the other point that I want to make is that what is India's outreach efforts in the Pacific Island countries vis-a-vis China's? What has India been doing over the past several decades? And is India trying to counter China in this region? The other point that I want to make is that with regard to China's construction of the artificial islands in the South China Sea, what kind of, is there any kind of an extension of its security along its peripheral boundaries, and especially in view of the Quad? So we cannot miss out Quad over here. Australia being one of the major players of major partners of Quad. Looking into China's aid, I think how do we judge this? How do we measure China's aid, whether it is completely altruistic or not, is what our the speaker of this this conference had started the conference when he said when Professor Prasenjit Dwara had mentioned the debt for nature. The debt for nature. I think that needs to come into focus over here when you're talking about China's foreign aid. Is it completely altruistic, and are they willing to give back to nature? Are they willing to give back, to the environment for whatever they are doing, or does it have, their underlying national interest and strategic motives? So these points, I think, needs to be highlighted over here because aid is seen mainly as a tool. There are, China has bigger designs. So just looking at aid itself is would not fulfill the purpose. I'm looking at at a more grand strategic perspective.
Can you please conclude?
Yeah. So
we could have discussions from the floor.
Just another one to 1.5 minutes for the next paper. Thank you, Khanindra. Your paper, I think, discussed, 2 or 3 issues that could have been, that could have generated this kind of a situation for China to make huge imports from India. Now, you said it was COVID. It could be geopolitical and border clashes. You mentioned also that the Galwan incident. What I would suggest you is, could you do a comparative study, and taking from 2019 to 2021 is a very short period. You need to just wait and just observe and then make a comparative study of of what happened in the 2019, taking these factors, certain factors, and then in the coming years, or if you look at the past, what was the reason that China actually made such kind of imports. And 19 to 21 is the time period is a little too short, for any kind of substantial postulation. I think this is just that thing that I need to mention over here. Otherwise, I think your paper was written really well, especially with the fact that you mentioned, the details of, the cereals and the rice imports, and then how you deducted from there. So yeah, I think that's the point that I need to make. I think there needs to be a comparative study over here in the second paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pazu. Now I'll invite Dr. Bhaskar.
Yes, sir.
Bhaskar, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. I do have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you very much. I express my gratitude to the chair and the ICS to give me this platform to discuss. However, I just got one paper to discuss. The paper is of Sharmistha Hazra, and I have few things to say on this paper. That when I was reading this paper and when I was listening to the presentation also, I found that this paper is very descriptive, to an extent very explanatory also. Our paper is focused upon that how China is maximizing the power. But when it came, the maximization of power, Sharmistha, I think we should also, mention the scholarship was talking about these all theoretical inputs. But I was really wondering, in fact, that if China is maximizing power in these regions, as I'm a student of African studies, who is maximizer of security? Is it US? Is it China? Is it India? Or is it France? Because these are very important players in Africa. US is established, France is very established power in, especially in West Africa. So who is security maximizer here? So you can, you can take the help of some theoretical propositions from international politics. It's like John Mearsheimer will be a very great help to this, to understand this very thing. That is China becoming offensive, or US is becoming defensive, or India is becoming defensive. One more thing, as Professor Panu was already speaking on these lines. So one thing what Sharmistha, we need to understand that what Hans Magantha says is a very important thing. He says in his book, Politics Among Nations, that foreign policy should be a response. I mean, it's a response. So is that, India, US, France, everyone is just responding to the Chinese foreign policy? That's something very interesting happening in the world politics. That we, if you look from African perspective, US, France, India, everyone has given a very superstructural help to Africa, right? If I take the African standpoint, they take superstructural help, human rights, food security, this, that, and all, violence, non-violence, Gandhi. But the real thing is that the economic development, and all of these powers who were existing in Africa, they were not actually looking at the basic, the structural part of, of the things. So that can be a very important intervention to look upon. When I was reading your paper, I really missed one person. That is Nicholas John Spykman. You could have taken his theory of dreamland to give a sound reflection to your paper. However, you talk about Alfred Mahan in your presentation, but he was not mentioned in your paper. He should be mentioned when you're talking about maritime, when you're talking about anything. These scholars are the one who established this whole thing. So because he is the one who is talking about that sea power is the superior to land power. The last section, I'm not taking much time, I'll be strict to the time. The counterpoints, what I'm trying to project before you is that in your paper, you have mentioned one thing, a re-globalization of developing countries. I was really, confused that how this is happening. You couldn't explain it. I would definitely request you to, put some light on this, that how re-globalization of developing countries are happening. Second thing you're mentioning is that energy is long-term gain for China here. I have little disagreement with this, that not energy is the long-term gain. China, as far as I understand, is doing business. That's the first step. But the politics is the real term gain. That's the real idea which China really want to have. As Professor Panu has rightly mentioned, that they are they're following the same path, right? But at the last, in conclusion, you mentioned, which I have many places I've disagreed with this, that you look at the whole American papers since 10 years, they are just bashing China. They're just directed that China is a new colony, China is this, China is that, China is that, and then you are also trapped into this whole Western, notion. What you wrote is that China is called neocolonialism, is the champion of neocolonialism. And neocolonialism is a challenge to liberal international order, right? That I do not agree with. I say that why should we not say that it is a socialist or communist international order which is challenging the liberal international order? That we don't say. We say only those things what Americans or Western theorists are basically trying to put on. So look at that part. That's something is really good intervention will be from your side. Last is the security question you have put very, very in abstract, but the whole paper, you have taken one paragraph on security question, right? African security is important, definitely. But why do we say that, Americans, Indians, French, Germans, these are not challenged to the security of Africa? Why only China is, challenged to the security of Africa? These questions are very critical questions, which I think you can actually deal with. Third, last thing, that India should not only say this, that China is coming. China is coming with a real proposal to Africa, as I feel, right? I was in Beijing, and I could see that how they are making this, happening there. They're welcoming Africa wholeheartedly. When it comes to India, we sent our MP, member of parliament, to receive the president of one of the African country. That kind of things actually is a response, to Africa. So if we think from African perspective, we are not treating them as equal partners. I'm just ending, sir. Thank you very much. I think you can take these things into consideration. And I'm thanking all of the ICS organizer and the chair to give me an opportunity. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've cut into the Q&A. Yeah, we should have had some interesting discussion, but I think the discussions have taken
It's perfectly all right, sir. It's perfectly all right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we'll have a very short Q&A. So let me open the floor for questions. You may put your questions in the chat box, or you can,
we have a raised hand by Mr. Partho, who is a research intern in ICS.
Yeah.
Partho, please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I have a question with regards to China's engagements in developing and underdeveloped countries. When we say it's a debt diplomacy and China's engagement could be a threat to the host countries, aren't there any alternatives for developing and underdeveloped countries? And if there are alternatives, then why do they only go for Chinese debts instead of, despite of knowing that debt trap diplomacy is a real thing? Thank you. Yes, that's all my question. Yes.
Yeah.
It can be answered by any of the panelists. Yes.
Yeah. Any other question?
Right. Another question would be that what is the present status quo of
any other participant?
Right.
Yeah. Any other participant?
So as of now, this was
only one.
Yeah, we can take it one by one if any other question comes.
Okay. Yeah. Who's going to go for this question? This is fairly open-ended between Sharmistha and Jasveer. So one of you have to take the call.
Shubhadeep, can you unmute Jasveer?
Oh, wait.
He's not the co-host.
Maybe also. Yeah. Hello, Jasveer. Hello, Jasveer. I don't understand. He's the co-host, but no. Hello.
Yes, Jasveer, would you like to answer the question?
Yes, ma'am. See, in context of Pacific Island countries, when we see why they are receiving aid from China, if they know that receiving aid from China is dipping them into the debt trap. So basically, they are hugely dependent countries. So their demand for aid generates more demand for aid, which keeps them tied in the debt trap cycles. So basically, the Chinese strategy in Pacific Island countries is of elite capturing. So they are providing foreign aid majorly, for example, in case of Solomon Islands, they are providing aid to the MPs of Solomon Islands. So they can use it to keep in power to support China's one China policy. So these kind of strategies China is using there. On other hand, by receiving aid from China, what they are doing, China provides them an alternative because China is growing economy, economic power. So they can't avoid China easily. Can't avoid China. So and for the reduce of their dependence on traditional donors. So what can they do? They can make a balance between traditional and modern donors. But due to the weak institutional structures over there, so they are getting failed into that and dipping into the Chinese side. So that's it.
Thank you, Jasveer. I thought we had 3 excellent presentations, and we should have heard some more questions or clarifications from the seeking clarifications from the speakers. So,
may I make a small point over here, sir?
Yes, please do.
If I may be allowed to, yeah. The question that he made was, is there any alternative? So why can't India be an alternative? India's role is also no less than China, and I think India has more credibility. It has better international, I think, image in the sense that we have stuck by certain norms and of the international international law. So India, I think, is a at face value, it is a competitor with China, but I think India just needs to reach out to these countries. We need to make a stronger effort, and there is nothing that will stop these countries, because Africa also finds affinity with India. It's just that we need to reach out more.
Yeah, I think this can be responded to by the presenters. Poonam has a very important point. The presenters should actually respond to the discussions, the point raised by the discussions. Now, can you go one by one? Can we go to Sharmistha first?
Yes. So what exactly, the question is, why can't India be the alternative?
No, I think Dr. Pazzo makes some very interesting points in his comment on your paper. So
no, Dr. Bhaskar made points regarding my paper.
Oh, your paper, sorry, Dr. Bhaskar, sorry.
Whatever the points he has discussed, so definitely I will look into those, like the reglobalization of the developing countries, and theoretically it was also suggested that my paper was weak. And then I will look into this one. Socialist and communist orders are being challenged. They're challenging the liberal international order. Yeah, it's very true that nowadays, whatever the Western literature we are reading, in fact, Indian literature also, we only see that liberal international order is at stake, like John Ickenberry and others has also said. But nowhere this point has been made that socialist order is being challenged. And I think whenever we heard this particular terms called communism and socialism, so everyone is like very much scared of this term. And China, I think that's the reason, like China is being seen in a very different way. China is promoting socialism or communism.
Okay, thank you.
And we know that it's a liberal, anyhow, like capitalist, it's a capitalist order, anyhow, we know.
Okay.
So may I request you to please make the concluding remarks as the chair? We are running out of time.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
So I thought I'll keep my comments really restricted to 1 or 2 minutes. I thought Jasveer and Khanindra could also, in just 1 minute each, to what the discussants had said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Discuss and Dr. Pazul. Jasveer,
Yes,
your
sir.
response to what Dr. Pazul had said?
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely, sir. I will look the other models as well for this papers. And regarding the Chinese engagement on regional basis or country basis, so largely China is engaging with the Pacific Island countries in country-to-country basis, where there is a weak institutional structure. So China is providing the their aid to that countries, and such as in case of Solomon Islands, we can compare Solomon Islands with the federal state of Micronesia, which is comparatively good institutional structures. So where there is a weak institutional structure, so China is providing foreign aid to that particular country and extracting the all benefits from there. So this kind of strategy China has adopted. But in case of India, I have not looked the Indian engagement over there. So I will definitely look to that. So that's.
Thank you, Jasveer. Khanindra, can you just take just one minute?
Yeah, just that unfortunately I could not hear all the comments made by Professor Hazra, but I'll go through the recordings, and regarding your both the comments, I'll definitely include it in my extended or modified version. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. These were 3 excellent papers, and on the sole question of foreign aid, I've been looking at all the question of foreign aid from an economic perspective. So I found this very interesting. The two papers on foreign aid. Now, when we look at the new donors, there's a whole new huge discourse on the behavior of the new donors versus the old donors. The Paris Club and how they actually, the new donors are behaving. Now, India came up with a new narrative, I would say. When India became a development partner, we didn't call ourselves an aid giver. We said that what we are doing is extended development partnership, and the basic difference that we made was that in case of the traditional donors, they were always sort of supply driven. They went with a certain package of funds and projects, and they imposed it on the developing countries. And what India said it was doing was it was demand driven. We go to our partners, we look at their needs and then respond to their needs. And this is what was our narrative when we actually engaged with Africa, when we had this Africa-India Forum summits and all that came out of that. So this is what the narrative which was presented there. Now, with China, the increasing evidence that we have is that China is behaving exactly like the traditional donor. The traditional donor always went into these, developing countries with the sole intention of extracting as much of raw materials that they can. Yeah. this was a colonial pattern of exploitation of these countries, and China is doing exactly that. Now, and that is the reason why, they're actually investing so much in infrastructure. So if you compare what the British did in the colonies, including India, the infrastructure was built precisely for extracting, raw materials from the hinterland, and therefore, if you look at the Chinese, the Chinese inroads into Africa, investing in ports and investing in infrastructure, doing precisely that. Now, so this is a very interesting dimension to really explore. The second is, linked to the first, what I mentioned about India, that mostly aid coming from the north, from the traditional donors, was tied. Yeah, and one of the speakers said that, in case of China, it was non-conditionality was really the highlight of China's aid giving process. Now, is it true? Mostly from whatever I have actually researched, it's not true. And some evidence that I think Sharmistha or even Jasveer provided on the kind of increase in trade that had taken place after, China went and invested or, had provided aid to these countries, is some kind of an indication that, the Chinese were actually trying to create a market through aid, and they were then using this instrument, the aid instrument, to increase their markets. So I think if both the speakers, both the scholars who are looking at this aid issue on Africa and Pacific Island could bring in this dimension, it will be very, very interesting. I think it will be a very interesting interdisciplinary kind of a thing. As far as India is concerned, I think India, Dr. Pazo's question, I think India has reached its limits as far as providing aid to, its partner countries is concerned. India has actually invested heavily in South Asia. It needs to do that even more. Again, the question of Chinese presence in South Asia comes in very, very strongly here. So, and India doesn't have those kinds of big pockets that China has. So, so India, if it has to really counter increasing Chinese presence in South Asia, then India has to invest a lot more in South Asia. And of course, in Africa, which has become a very important part of India's aid diplomacy over the years. So let me end the session here. I've gone 3 minutes above the extended time that Remia gave me. It was really a pleasure hearing all the 3 presentations. I look forward to reading the papers and learning more from the research that these wonderful young scholars are doing. And thank you again very much to the organizers for asking me to chair this session. Thank you very much, and a good day to all of you.
Thank you. Let me now conclude by thanking our chair, Professor Dhar, and all the panelists of this session. The video recording of this session will be available on ICCS YouTube channel. We will now take a lunch break and reconvene at 2:30 for our next session, which is thematic panel 5. The theme of the panel is Chinese discourse and praxis. Please note that the meeting room shall remain open. And you could stay back or you could join again. Everyone except the panelists are expected to keep their audio and video off for the next session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.